We do not have the exceptions to the appeal because they were never attached to the indictments, transcripts, and affidavits that were sent to the Virginia Supreme Court of Appeals. However, we think we know why this was done, and we have a clue as to what should have been attached from the defense counsel in his interview with the Big Stone Gap. We will now take this interview further apart to glean information that has been lost to us. All aboard the Kentucky-Tennessee Living Time Machine. Please fasten your seatbelts and keep your arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. But to get going, we need your help. We still need to fire up that time machine to transport us. Please help us by clicking on the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons down below. Not only does this fire up the time machine, but it convinces the YouTube algorithm that we need a bigger time machine to reach more people who love history as much as you do. Now, back to our story. We, the jury. Quote, the trial of Dr. Marshall Benton Taylor lasted 6 days, commencing on Monday, September 5th, and ending on Saturday, September 10th, 1892. On the last day of the trial of the jury, after a lengthy argument had been heard on both sides of the case, after deliberating for some time, returned into court with the following verdict. Quote, we, the jury, find the prisoner, M.B. Taylor, guilty of murder of the first degree, unquote. Signed, William Wolfe, Foreman, unquote. The laws of the state then in force provided that in a conviction of murder of the first degree, the law fixed the punishment and not the jury, which the punishment was death by hanging. The prisoner, M.B. Taylor, after the verdict was returned against him, moved the court in arrest of judgment and to set aside the verdict of the jury and grant him a new trial for the various grounds of error assigned at bar, which motion the court overruled and the prisoner, by his counsel, accepted. 12 bills of exception were signed by the court and ordered to be made part of the record of the case, and an appeal to the Supreme Court was thereupon noted. Judge Williams then sentenced the prisoner, which was hanging by the neck until dead. The date of the execution of sentence was fixed for the 10th of December, between the hours of 10 o'clock a.m. and 2 o'clock p.m., at its usual place provided by law. On the following Monday morning, after the sentence was passed on the prisoner, the judge of the court entered an order directing the prisoner to be confined in the city jail of Lynchburg to await action of the Supreme Court on his appeal, unquote. There are several things that we feel that you, our viewers and readers, must be informed about before we proceed any further. Everything that we have just stated is a direct quote from the History of Wise County, Virginia, by Charles A. Johnson. The jury illegally examines the rifle. Secondly, the recorded statement, quote, various grounds of error assigned at bar, unquote, refers to suspected by the defense mistakes made by the court or judge over the course of the trial. But the one specifically pointed out at this point of the trial was a huge one, and this error should have automatically triggered a mistrial. For some reason, the judge allowed the jury to examine the suspected murder weapon unsupervised. What's worse is that the inspection was apparently done without the knowledge of the defendant or his attorneys, and may have even occurred without the knowledge of the prosecution. To make matters even worse, 3 of the jurors had taken upon themselves to disassemble the rifle. These 3 jurors then educated the rest of the jury, explaining to them that the rifle had been recently altered. The rest of the jury had been told that Taylor had altered the rifle to strike the bullet in the center. But because the rifle had been a rimfire, it wasn't, which would have matched the shell casings found at the crime scene. The rifle now struck those same casings just off center. Although what we have just told you is a partial speculation, we know something like this happened. And we know this, thanks to the affidavits that were attached to the transcript of the trial. Here again, we thank and praise the actions of juror I.N. Mills, because we believe that if he had not reported to the sheriff that the jury disassembled the rifle and was, quote, unable, unquote, to properly reassemble it, no one would have ever known that the jury's illegal action and the 4 affidavits would not exist. The test firing of the rifle. There is also something else that we believe that you should know here. An exclusive newspaper interview appeared in the Big Stone Gap Post, dated February 16, 1893. The interview was with Judge T.M. Alderson, Taylor's chief defense counsel. Judge Alderson states in the interview that Dr. Taylor's rifle had been hot-fired with live ammunition 5 times during its initial court examination. He further states that during these live firings that the firing pin had struck the shells dead center with each shot. The affidavit of juror I.N. Mills tells us that at least he and one other juror would not have voted to convict if this examination of the rifle had not taken place. The truth is that the rifle was an 1876 Winchester Centennial Edition. From our understanding, the first run of these rifles had been numbered because of their collectability. In addition to being released during the country's centennial celebration, these rifles were the first of Winchester's big game rifles. The Winchester Centennial could only load, using the lever, the newly introduced Winchester 45-75 centerfire ammunition. The casings found at the crime scene were in fact 44 caliber rimfire ammunition. The only visible, to the eye, difference between the two ammunitions was the slight bottleneck on the 45-75 ammunition. Otherwise, the only way to tell the difference between these two ammunitions is to use a micrometer to measure them. This means that when the 44 shell casings found at the crime scene had been hand-loaded into the Centennial rifle and dry-fired, the plunger struck the shell just off-center. This was because of the slight size difference between the two types of ammunition, which is exactly what the affidavit of I.N. Mills tells us. What we have just told you will be further corroborated by Judge T.M. Alderson as we continue to examine the exclusive interview conducted in February 1893. The newspaper interviews. Due to the fears of a run on Wise County Jail and an early punishment, Dr. Marshall Benton Taylor would be transported to the jail in Lynchburg, Virginia on Monday, September 12, 1892. There, he would await the date of his execution or for the appellate court to agree to hear his case. At that time, the appellate court heard cases for 8 months, from June through January. December soon came with no word from the court. Then, at the last minute, Supreme Court Justice Richardson issued a stay of execution on December 8, 1892, and issued a preliminary court date for the last week of June 1893. In February of 1893, Judge Alderson gave his exclusive interview to the Big Stone Gap Post as he waited to board a train to Bristol, Tennessee. Doc Taylor would also give a jailhouse interview to the Roanoke Times at some point while awaiting the trial. Both would attest the issue of the rifle that had occurred with the jury in their individual interviews. Likewise, both felt that, more than anything else, this singular issue merited a new trial. Although it was picked up nationwide, only excerpts of the Taylor interview appeared in most newspapers, as it is very hard to find it in its entirety. But as far as we know, the Alderson interview exclusively appeared in the Big Stone Gap Post. While there may be several reasons for Judge Alderson's interview to remain an exclusive, we believe it is because there appears to be an issue with and within this interview. In next week's video, we will dive into the most surprising move that the Big Stone Gap Post owners make during the events of the Pound Gap Massacre and the issues with the interview of Judge T.M. Alderson itself, and why we believe that this interview was not shared with other newspapers of the time, even though it was making national headlines. Thank you. We at Kentucky Tennessee Living would like to thank you for watching our video series on the Killing Rock, also called the Pound Gap Massacre. Don't forget to hit that like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification button. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky Tennessee Living as we are discovering the mysteries in Appalachian history.